Hello, everyone. My name is Anusha Natarajan, and I'm the lead fellow for the Andrew Goodman Fellows Program here at Arizona State University. I'm here with two other Andrew Goodman Fellows, Lillian and Ethan, and they will be sharing about their experiences about civic engagement and what led them to get more involved in college. Just a little background information on the Andrew Goodman Foundation. We are in mostly all campuses all across the country. We do a lot of work in civic engagement, especially in voter registration and voter education, and we like to do a lot of campus-wide initiatives on that. So today, our panelists are going to be sharing about the importance of civic engagement, why they decided to stay civically engaged in their respective campuses, and advice that they would like to share with you all. So first, I'm going to have Lillian introduce herself. Go ahead and tell us your name, your year, major, and maybe where you're from.
Hi, I'm Lily. I am a junior at ASU, and I'm double majoring in political science and economics, and I'm from Tucson, Arizona.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then I'll pass it on to Ethan.
Hello, my name's Ethan Pellin. I'm also a junior at ASU. I'm studying global politics and data analytics at the business school, so do it too if you're in business. And then, what was the other portion that you were asking about?
Where are you from?
Oh, and I'm from Chandler, Arizona.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for sharing. We'll go ahead and get started with the first question. So Lillian, what is your civic engagement story? How did you get started with civic engagement?
Yeah, so I think I got started in civic engagement around my junior year of high school. I joined the Young Dems Club at my high school, and we started to do stuff a lot with like voter outreach, getting students registered to vote at school, things like that. And then my time overlapped with the big March for Our Lives movement. So we also did a lot of stuff surrounding that, organizing a walkout and a march to McSally's office. So it overlapped with the time when there was a lot of focus on student civic engagement specifically. And then when I got to college, I wanted to still be involved somehow. So I interned with Congressman Greg Stanton, who's the congressman for Tempe, the district that Tempe's in. And I interned in the fall of 2020, so that overlapped with the election. So we did a lot with casework and constituent calls. So we did a lot with helping people figure out how to register to vote, issues with mail-in ballots, helping them track and find their mail-in ballots, answering questions and concerns about that, and then a lot of stuff after with election disinformation, filtering out love calls, stuff like that. And now I'm involved with AGF.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. That's incredible. How about you, Ethan? How did you get started?
So I got started roughly around the same time that Lillian did, although mine was, there wasn't any established orgs at all on my campus. So like we didn't have like Young Dems or they call it college Republicans in college. I don't even know what they call it at high school level. But yeah, they didn't have any sort of organizations like that. But my school, it was Basha High School, so shout out if any of you guys are Bears, is they have what's called a 4-year project. So sort of over the course of your 4 years of high school, you work on creating a sort of some kind of like community action plan project, something you want to do to help out either the school community or Chandler or just really anything in general. Like, I mean, one group even like built a school in Africa one year. But my project was to get as many students as possible registered at my campus. So sort of over the course of all of the portion leading up to the 2018 midterm, and after that, I was getting students registered to vote. Basically, anyone who could get registered to vote, I was bringing them down and trying to get them registered. A lot of over the course of that time too, Adrian Fontes' office, who was the Maricopa County Recorder before the current Riker, had a lot of community outreach, especially to students. I know that Riker's continued some of it, but like Fontes was really really about getting young people involved in the process. So like I attended like junior deputy registrar trainings and really got involved with his office in terms of getting involved in community, getting people registered. When I got to college, I wanted to continue that, so I interned with the student government. I worked mostly on voter outreach, civic engagement on campus. The thing I was most involved with and happy about was sort of our deputy voter registrar training, where we offer an opportunity for Maricopa County to train people on sort of how to be their ambassadors and outreach in the community. And then I got involved with AGF this year, wanting to sort of continue that.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for sharing. Those are definitely very inspiring stories. I like how you all were talking about how you got motivated to getting involved in high school. So that's neat. So kind of more onto the present. So I'm curious to know more about what made you want to continue to be civically engaged in college. So we'll start off with Lillian.
Yeah, I think for me, the thing that really made me want to continue was seeing kind of firsthand how voter suppression was impacting those in my community. So on a more local, direct level with ASU, I was seeing my friends who are from out of state really struggling to get their absentee ballots and being able to still vote while being at ASU. And then just still seeing the overall national push towards putting in more barriers for voting. And then in Arizona specifically, we saw a lot with removing the permanent early voting list and taking a while to certify the election. A lot of things like that were really frustrating to see, and I really wanted to be a part of the movement to counter those.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. We'll move on to Ethan next.
I just love registering voters. It's just something about it. I love getting new people who haven't been involved in the process before to write down their name, write down their address, put all that information, and then to know that there's a chance that they're gonna vote. While I was in high school, I was also following up with people who registered to make sure that they were voting if they had any questions that they needed answered. I just really liked because I was so passionate about it, getting other people involved in the process. Because I think it's the best possible sort of system we can have. This is where it's easy and accessible to vote as possible. And my sort of work was doing a very small part in achieving that broader goal. And I agree with Lillian that it's also just out of a broader concern with sort of where things are generally trending in certain states. While I think we're lucky to have certain aspects in Arizona, like the Independent Redistricting Commission, and to still have a county recorder here in Maricopa County, who, even though it switched parties, he still kept a lot of the same initiatives. Just broadly in the state, there's definitely like changing climate, and definitely in other states like Texas, there's just generally a concerning sort of turn towards making it less accessible and less open. And that's what we should all want.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that too. Those are also great examples in staying civically engaged in college. Just to follow up to that, we did recently finish up an election in 2020. So how were you all engaged with the 2020 election? What did you do during that time, especially since we were in the pandemic where a lot of things were virtual? So we'll start off with Lillian.
Yeah, so kind of like how I mentioned previously, I was interning with the Office of Congressman Stanton. So one of the biggest things, because of the pandemic, we did a lot with registering people to vote by mail and answering a lot of questions with that. There were a lot of people who were really concerned about their ballots not coming in time, or who didn't understand how to get those ballots by mail. So we were able to reach out to U.S. Postal Service and start cases that way, which I thought was really important. Another thing too was after the election, we got a lot of calls regarding people who were concerned about the election results not being fair, or people who were really frustrated with the election results being contested. And so we had to field a lot of calls to answer people's questions about that, do a lot of concerns. And I think I was definitely surprised with how much work we had to do after regarding the election, just as much as we did to support people before.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. How about you, Ethan?
Not enough, but what I did do was I volunteered for campaigns during the primaries, and then I also then after the fact then volunteered for the Biden campaign, and then I also just still did mostly within with my own circles. I was just pushing people to get registered, but since it was the virtual environment, I wasn't necessarily so that's why I'm happy. And that's why this is such a great opportunity for anyone who's interested in getting involved with civic engagement. Is now that things transition more so back to normal, there's a lot more opportunities to get people you don't know registered to vote. And that's the great thing about registering is that you'll meet people that you don't know, but you can get them registered, because now we're sort of back in this period where you can table, where you can just sort of walk up to people and sort of explain to them why it's important to get registered.
Sweet. Yeah, no, those are all great responses. I'm glad you were all still, being able to engage people, especially during the pandemic where a lot of stuff was going on virtually. So yes, thank you for sharing. And then the next question I wanted to ask, this is a two-part question. So I wanted to ask you all, what do you recommend students to do, especially during a non-election year? And how can they still be civically engaged? This can be applicable to both election or non-election year.
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things you can do during a non-election year is start having conversations with people you know in your community who are reluctant when it comes to voting. When you start putting in those ideas now about the importance of voting, getting registered to vote, it's so much easier when you have a year or 6 months before it's time for them to vote versus just 1 month, and you're more likely to actually be able to make an impact. Another thing that I think is really important is just making sure that you're staying really informed on issues, both the local and national. I think a lot of times local issues, especially during non-election years, can really get ignored. So making sure that you're still staying informed on what's going on, and then going along with that, still calling and emailing your elected officials and holding them accountable, even if they aren't going to be up for re-election soon. It's still important that you are making those calls and reaching out to them and showing that you're engaged. And then also in terms of on just election years, I think volunteering for campaigns is always really great. That's something that I really regret not doing more of when I was in high school. Joining organizations like Young Democrats or other things that are available to you that allow you to help people register to vote, larger organizations, so that you can be a part of the movement without feeling the pressure to figure out everything yourself, and just other general ways to help register people to vote and informing them on what's going on.
Awesome. Thank you. Go ahead, Ethan.
Well, it depends. I mean, there's a lot. There's definitely a lot you can do. I know you guys, this is probably what people say a lot, but don't ignore the local angle. Especially if you ever look at how many people show up to a local city council meeting or to a school board meeting, it's not very many. So even just you going can have a pretty substantial impact on whatever issue or sort of thing that the topic that the city council or your local sort of board is considering or talking about. And also they're really probably going to be impressed and sort of want to listen to more to what a young person like you is going to want to say. There's a lot of things, of course, throughout sort of the year that these organizations are deciding on. If you're in high school, and this is something that I found was in the sort of high school environment, it's actually a really great place to be to get students registered, is because a lot of these, it depends on the size of your high school, but a lot of these are people you're going to see a lot. You're always there, so you're always there 5 days a week. There's a lot of opportunities after school or during lunch to just talk to people, get people registered, and I mean, at least in my experience, pretty much anyone you talk to, from teachers to administrative staff, they're going to love and support any effort by a student to get people registered to vote. Other thing too is just reach out to your local sort of, in Maricopa County, we have the county recorder's office like I talked about, but sort of look to see sort of who's in charge of administering and registering voters in your county or city. Reach out to their office. Their office is, again, like I said, they're going to love a young person like you who's going to reach out to them. They're always looking for it. So you can get they offer a lot of them offer trainings and offer other ways, not just registering voters, but like, for example, Maricopa County deputy registrars and junior deputy registrars can actually participate in naturalization process. So they can help be at the events where new U.S. citizens actually get their citizenship, which is a great sort of experience you should definitely do if you ever get a chance. Just so much more. Like Lillian said, volunteer. If it's the election season, if it's not the election season, it's still just a great time to get people registered. You've got 6 months, 8 months of time, and really, at least in my experience, it was just sort of that consistent. Like, don't be too pushy. Don't harass people, but in a sense, just sort of being like a consistent reminder within reason of to your peers about why it's important. And eventually, even though you'll probably face a lot of resistance, it's sort of over time you'll break down that resistance and they'll sort of come around to it. And just always try to find a sort of an angle of something that person's interested in, and then connect it to some sort of broader issue. So believe it or not, I just found things sort of when net neutrality was a big thing. I convinced a lot of people who were really interested in video games to vote, because they were really concerned about sort of that issue, because they were concerned about sort of lacking access to being able to watch streaming or being able to, or actually be able to play their games. It just finding that sort of that connection to that person can go a long way.
Wow, no, this is great advice. Thank you all so much for sharing that. And I just wanted to ask one other follow-up. If a student has not yet registered to vote and they're going to be 18 for the next election, how can they register to vote?
Yeah, so there are a lot of different ways you can do this. You can register to vote online, which is really nice now. So I would say that's probably the easiest way to do it. And even with a simple Google search, you don't have to remember any website from this, just look up how to register to vote online and it takes you right to the website. Also, a lot of times schools will help you register to vote. I know my high school did a mass registering for all seniors, and they just provide all the forms. So that was helpful. And also, like Ethan said, reaching out to the county reporter's office. Yeah, there are a lot of different ways. I think I even remember last year you could do it through Facebook. So there are definitely a lot of different ways.
Public libraries too. They usually have the forms, and they're going to appreciate. Again, like I said, you always find with this. It does feel good. It does feel good. It does feel nice in a certain sense to be involved as a young person, because everyone really always appreciates it. But your local library they'll definitely also always have people willing to help, help you run through the process online, or they often typically will also have the forms. And also, I also found if you're wanting to get other students registered, other people registered, local libraries are almost always willing to sponsor or help you out with planning of a voter registration drive. But like Lillian said, go online. It's really easy now, especially in Arizona. If you're a college student right now, you can. Most states offer online registration, so even if you don't want to register here in Arizona, you can go through a similar process. But online's really easy. That's what I'd recommend.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. Those are definitely great responses. I also think that the Secretary of State also offers, you're able to also register to vote or update your voter registration through there as well too. So no, I think those are great responses. And those are all the questions that I had, but I wanted to open the floor up to you both to see if you wanted to add anything else that I did not ask.
I think just really can't understress the importance of voting and getting your friends and your family registered to vote. Voting really does make such a huge impact on a national level. Even with the Electoral College, we saw like Arizona was blue in the last election. So that's like a huge deal. Voting is really important. And in local elections, it's even more important. So I really just say like, don't underestimate the power of your vote.
Like Lillian said, there's no flip. So if you're upset about that, vote. If you're happy about that, vote. And if you don't care, well, still vote. Like it's important to vote. The thing is that unfortunately it's been improving. The last election had probably the highest turnout we've seen in a long time. The last presidential election. But midterms don't have very high turnout. And the sort of the thing is even if you're upset, even if you're unhappy with sort of how things are, voting is a way to express that as well. And sort of the main way the easiest way you can get involved and you can sort of express your views is by voting. There's a lot of other ways, but voting is the easiest and sort of the first way that you can do it.
I love those responses. I feel like that's a great way to end the panel portion. But yeah, I just wanted to thank you all so much for sharing your experience, your advice, and also just spreading the motivation and getting out to vote. Hopefully you all took something away from this discussion. And yeah, the midterms are coming up next year. And if you are 18, we all recommend you to go out and register to vote. And definitely the places and resources that we all listed are great ways to get started and continue being civically engaged in your community, no matter where you are. So thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. And yeah, thank you all for listening.